Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. Westbrook Financial Solutions wasn't just a workplace, it was a legacy, a powerhouse, a community. For 15 consecutive quarters, we'd outperformed every competitor in the industry. I'm Charlotte Wilson, Senior Financial Analyst at Westbrook. For 15 years, I've watched our company climb from a promising regional firm to the undisputed industry leader. The annual company retreat to Aspen last month had been a celebration of another record-breaking year. Everyone received generous bonuses, and the champagne flowed freely as we toasted to continued success. The camaraderie among colleagues felt more like family than co-workers. Many of us had been together for over a decade, weathering economic downturns and celebrating triumphs side by side. Our office culture was the envy of competitors. The state-of-the-art gym, gourmet cafeteria, and flexible working arrangements meant employee satisfaction rates were through the roof. That Tuesday morning in April began like any other. I arrived early, savoring my latte from the in-house barista while reviewing quarterly projections that, once again, exceeded expectations. The morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating desks where dedicated professionals collaborated on groundbreaking financial strategies. Nancy Bennett, my closest colleague and friend since orientation 15 years ago, stopped by my desk with fresh pastries from the bakery downstairs. "Did you hear about the Henderson account?" she asked excitedly. "They're doubling their investment portfolio with us, the team's celebrating on Friday." That was Westbrook, one success after another, a well-oiled machine where talent was recognized and rewarded. Our founder's vision of creating not just a profitable business, but a workplace where people thrived had been realized beyond anyone's imagination. Which is why the sight of Eleanor from accounting, a 22-year veteran with numerous company awards, being escorted out by security that afternoon, felt like witnessing a glitch in the matrix. Her face was ashen, her personal belongings hastily packed in a cardboard box. "Budget adjustments," someone whispered as we watched in stunned silence. But that made no sense. Our financial reports, which I had personal access to, showed we were more profitable than ever. 2 weeks later, it was Thomas from marketing, then Patricia from human resources. Each dismissal followed the same pattern: shocked faces, security escorts, and confused whispers throughout the normally buoyant office. "Something doesn't add up," I murmured to Nancy as we watched Robert from legal being escorted out. His family photos and his Employee of the Decade plaque were stuffed unceremoniously into a box. The pattern continued, 1 or 2 people every week. No discernible connection, except that all the dismissed employees had been with Westbrook for over 10 years. Veterans. People who carried our company's history and values in their very DNA. I started keeping notes, documenting the dismissals, searching for connections. 30 years of combined experience walked out the door in a single month. The celebratory atmosphere that had defined Westbrook was evaporating, replaced by hushed conversations and worried glances. That evening, as I was working late, I noticed something odd in the company directory. New names appearing in key positions, people none of us had met or been introduced to. "They're all from the same previous company," Nancy noted when I showed her my findings. "Ridgeway Investments. It went bankrupt last year." A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of our award-winning office space. Something was happening to our perfect company, something that defied explanation. And I was determined to find out what it was. The next morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual. The office felt different now. The sleek, modern space that once inspired pride now seemed cold and uncertain. I needed answers before more veteran colleagues disappeared. I rehearsed what I'd say as the elevator climbed to the executive floor. After 15 years of dedicated service, I deserved some transparency. The quarterly report sat in my leather portfolio, irrefutable evidence of our success contradicting any budget adjustment claims. "Good morning, Charlotte," said Melissa, the executive assistant. "Don't you look determined today?" Her smile seemed forced, her eyes darting away too quickly. "Is he available? I need 10 minutes, I asked, nodding toward the imposing mahogany door of the CEO's office. "He's actually free until 9. Go right in." She hesitated. "Good luck." The office was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline, modern art adorning the walls. Behind the massive desk sat the man who'd transformed our company in ways none of us understood. "Charlotte Wilson, what can I do for you?" He didn't stand or offer to shake hands, his attention barely lifting from his computer screen. "I wanted to discuss the recent organizational changes," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "The terminations are causing concern, especially given our financial performance." I opened my portfolio, sliding the quarterly report across his desk. "We're up 22% year over year. These numbers don't align with the need for staff reductions." He barely glanced at the report. "The financial success you're referring to is precisely because of my strategic restructuring. With all due respect, sir, these profits were trending upward long before the terminations began. Many of the people let go were instrumental in building Westbrook's success." His expression hardened. "Miss Wilson, longevity does not equal innovation. This company was stagnating beneath its apparent success." "Stagnating? We've been industry leaders for—" "Leading a race in the wrong direction is still heading the wrong way," he interrupted, leaning forward. Westbrook needed fresh perspectives, unencumbered by outdated methodologies. The contempt in his voice for the company I loved made my skin crawl. "Those outdated methodologies built this company's reputation," I countered. Something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or something darker. "Let me be clear, Miss Wilson. I was brought in to make Westbrook not just profitable, but future-proof. The board has complete confidence in my methods." Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I appreciate your passion for Westbrook's legacy. It's admirable, but perhaps misplaced in today's rapidly evolving financial landscape." His words were rehearsed, empty corporate jargon masking something I couldn't quite identify. "What about the new hires?" I pressed. "All from Ridgeway Investments?" His smile vanished. "You've been investigating personnel matters outside your department?" "I noticed changes in the company directory," I replied, refusing to be intimidated. "Ridgeway went bankrupt. Why bring in leadership from a failed company?" He stood abruptly, signaling the end of our conversation. "Bankruptcy can be a strategic business decision, Miss Wilson, not always a failure. Something you might understand if you broadened your financial perspective." As I turned to leave, he added, "Charlotte, you've been with Westbrook for how long?" 15 years, I answered, my stomach nodding. "Perhaps that's something to reflect upon." His tone was light, but the threat was unmistakable. Change is inevitable. Some adapt, others don't. Walking back to my office, I felt eyes on me. Melissa's worried glance, curious stares from unfamiliar new executives in the hallway, and through the glass walls of the conference room, Nancy frantically waving me over. "What happened?" she whispered when I joined her. "He basically threatened my job," I replied. "Something's very wrong here, Nancy. This isn't about budget or innovation. He's systematically removing everyone who knows how this company really works." Nancy pushed a folded newspaper toward me. "Look what I found about Ridgeway." Nancy's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed out the business section of the Financial Times. The article was small, tucked away on page 8, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. "Third quarter Ridgeway investigation continues," read the headline. The article detailed an ongoing SEC investigation into financial irregularities at Ridgeway Investments before its bankruptcy declaration. No charges had been filed, but several executives were under scrutiny for potential securities fraud and misappropriation of funds. "Look at the names," Nancy whispered, her finger running down the short list of executives mentioned. 3 of them now occupied corner offices at Westbrook. "This can't be a coincidence," I said, photographing the article with my phone. "But why would our board bring in people from a company under investigation?" "Maybe they don't know?" Nancy suggested. I shook my head. Due diligence would have uncovered this. Something else is happening. Over the next week, Westbrook began to change in subtle ways. The quarterly company meeting was postponed indefinitely. The open-door policy that had been our hallmark was replaced with formal meeting requests. The CEO, once visible and engaging at company functions, was now conspicuously absent from the office floor. More concerning were the changes to our client portfolios. Several long-standing client relationships were being restructured or terminated altogether. The reasons given were vague: strategic realignment or portfolio optimization, the same empty corporate speak used to justify the firings. During Wednesday's team briefing, our department head, Victor, announced new investment protocols that made my ethical alarm bells ring. The new guidelines emphasized short-term gains over sustainable growth, with aggressive reallocation strategies that bordered on risky. These came directly from the executive floor, Victor explained when I questioned him privately afterward. His expression was apologetic but resigned. My hands are tied, Charlotte. That evening, I stayed late, analyzing our recent transactions. A pattern emerged. Client funds were being moved into increasingly volatile investments with unusually high management fees. The transactions weren't illegal, but they skated dangerously close to ethical boundaries and contradicted everything Westbrook had stood for. I was about to leave when I noticed the light still on in the CEO's office. Through the partially open blinds, I could see him pacing, gesturing emphatically during what appeared to be a heated phone conversation. His face was contorted with anger, nothing like the composed corporate mask he maintained in meetings. On impulse, I moved closer, positioning myself by the water cooler near his door. "The board doesn't need to know yet," I heard him snap. "By the time the quarterly figures come in, it'll be too late for them to interfere. Yes, I understand the risks. No, the old guard are being dealt with. Anyone who might piece it together is already gone or on their way out." My heart hammered against my ribs. Whatever was happening was worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about new management philosophies. It sounded like deliberate deception. The next morning, Nancy wasn't at her desk. Her family photos, the small jade plant she'd nurtured for years, her Employee of the Month trophies, all gone. When I asked Victor about her absence, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Organizational restructuring," he muttered, the same empty explanation that had accompanied every termination. Nancy had been my ally, my friend, and now she was gone, likely because we'd been seen discussing the newspaper article. The message was clear: I was being watched. That afternoon, I received an invitation to join the executive team for their weekly strategy lunch the following day. On the surface, it seemed like recognition, perhaps even a promotion. But given recent events, it felt more like a trap. They were either testing me or preparing to let me go. As the workday ended and colleagues filtered out, I made a decision. If I was going to understand what was happening to Westbrook and potentially save my job and the company I loved, I needed concrete evidence. After ensuring everyone had left for the night, I returned to the office. The security guard, Frank, had known me for years and barely glanced up from his crossword puzzle as I signed back in. "Forgot some reports for tomorrow's presentation," I explained, with a casual smile he didn't question. The executive floor was eerily quiet as I made my way to the CEO's office. My hands shook slightly as I removed the small device from my purse, a wireless security camera I'd purchased that afternoon, no larger than a USB drive. It could record audio and video for up to 48 hours on its internal battery and would upload footage to a secure cloud server whenever it detected Wi-Fi. Finding the perfect spot took several tense minutes. Finally, I positioned it on a bookshelf, nestled between financial reference volumes that clearly hadn't been touched since he took over. The camera's black finish blended perfectly with the dark wood, its tiny lens aimed precisely at his desk. As I was about to leave, my phone buzzed with an incoming email from the CEO. "Charlotte, given your interest in our organizational direction, I've moved our meeting to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Come prepared to discuss your observations and recommendations. Your perspective is valuable." The timestamp showed it had been sent just minutes ago. Had he seen me enter the building? Was he testing me? The timing seemed too coincidental. I navigated through the empty office with my heart in my throat, half expecting security to stop me. But I made it out without incident, the camera now silently recording whatever happened in that office. My stomach churned with conflict as I drove home. If caught, I could face not just termination, but potential legal consequences. But the alternative, watching Westbrook be destroyed from within while remaining silent, was unthinkable. That night, I barely slept. The CEO's meeting invitation felt like a chess move in a game I didn't fully understand. Was it genuine interest in my insights? A warning? Or was I being set up to fail? By morning, I'd made up my mind. I would attend the meeting, play the role of the concerned but cooperative employee, and learn what I could. Meanwhile, the camera would capture whatever happened when he thought no one was watching. As I dressed for work, selecting my most professional outfit like armor, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a line from which there would be no return. But sometimes, I reminded myself, doing the right thing meant taking risks. Westbrook had been my professional home for 15 years. Whatever was happening there, whatever threat was dismantling it from within, I was determined to expose it, even if it cost me everything. Part 4 summary. Charlotte Wilson, a senior financial analyst at Westbrook Financial Solutions, discovered her thriving company was mysteriously firing veteran employees while hiring new executives from Ridgeway Investments, a bankrupt company under SEC investigation. After confronting the CEO and receiving only vague explanations about strategic restructuring, Charlotte overheard him on the phone discussing keeping information from the board. When her colleague Nancy disappeared after they discussed a newspaper article about Ridgeway's financial irregularities, Charlotte took action. Noticing concerning changes in client portfolios that prioritize short-term gains over sustainable growth, she installed a hidden camera in the CEO's office after hours. Shortly afterward, she received an email moving their meeting to 8 a.m. the next day, making her suspect she might be under surveillance herself. Story. The next morning, I arrived at Westbrook to find the office landscape had shifted yet again. 5 unfamiliar faces occupied desks that had belonged to veteran team members just yesterday. Unlike our typically polished staff, these new hires seemed jarringly out of place in our prestigious financial firm. A young man in an ill-fitting suit with visible wrinkles lounged at Nancy's former workstation, his feet propped on her meticulously organized desk. Across the aisle, a woman who couldn't have been more than 22 was attempting to navigate our proprietary financial software with visible confusion, repeatedly clicking the wrong icons while sighing dramatically. "They're from the Ridgeway cohort," whispered Victor as he passed my desk. 3 more starting tomorrow. During the morning meeting, I reviewed the new hires' credentials displayed in their introduction packets. One claimed an MBA from a university I'd never heard of. Another listed financial experience with no specific roles or companies. Their resumes wouldn't have made it past the first screening in Westbrook's formerly rigorous hiring process. More disturbing than their lack of qualifications was their behavior. They moved through the office with a strange familiarity, accessing restricted areas without clearance cards. At lunch, I overheard 2 of them discussing client accounts they shouldn't have known existed. "Don't worry about the Preston portfolio," one murmured. "The boss says it'll be liquidated by Friday." The Preston account was one of our oldest and most stable. Liquidation made no sense from any legitimate financial strategy standpoint. Throughout the day, I noticed the new employees watching me. Subtle glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Abrupt changes in conversation when I approached. Once, I returned from the restroom to find one of them standing by my desk, quickly moving away when I appeared. By late afternoon, the office had emptied earlier than usual. Even Victor left without his customary good night, something he hadn't done in the 8 years we'd worked together. By 6, only a few of the new hires remained, huddled in the break room, occasionally glancing in my direction. I stayed deliberately, pretending to analyze quarterly reports while my mind focused on the camera I'd planted. The footage would upload to the cloud server when connected to Wi-Fi, but I needed to confirm it was working properly. With everyone else gone, this might be my only chance to check. At 6:45, the last of the new employees finally departed. I waited 10 more minutes, then moved swiftly to my computer, plugging in the receiver that would connect to the camera and download the initial test footage. My fingers trembled slightly as I entered my password. The security protocol required a special access code to view files from external devices, a code that, as a senior analyst, I had legitimate reason to possess. The computer hummed as it processed my request. A progress bar appeared, connecting to external device, 15%, 30%. Suddenly, my screen went black. A second later, the lights throughout the office shut off, plunging the floor into darkness broken only by the dim emergency exit signs. My heart pounded as I sat frozen in the darkness. Power outages were extremely rare in our building with its backup generators and advanced systems. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the darkened space. No response. I fumbled for my phone, switching on its flashlight, The sudden beam revealed nothing unusual, just the familiar office rendered strange by shadows. I tried calling building maintenance, but my phone showed no signal, another impossibility in downtown. A soft click from the direction of the elevators sent a chill down my spine. Someone else was still here. I quickly unplugged the receiver, slipping it into my purse along with my phone. Without power, there was nothing more I could do tonight. I needed to leave, immediately. Using my phone's flashlight, I navigated toward the emergency stairwell, moving as quietly as possible. Each shadow seemed to hold a potential watcher, each distant sound magnified by my growing unease. The 23 flights of stairs were exhausting, but encountering someone in a disabled elevator seemed far worse. Finally reaching the lobby, I found it eerily empty. Even the security guard who should have been at the front desk was absent. Outside, the city continued normally, unaware of the darkness and tension I'd just escaped. Streetlights illuminated pedestrians going about their evening routines. I hurried to my car, constantly checking over my shoulder, the weight of the receiver in my purse both reassuring and terrifying. That night, sleep eluded me. I tried accessing the cloud server from my home computer, but the camera hadn't uploaded any footage. Either the power outage had occurred before it could connect to Wi-Fi, or someone had discovered and disabled it. The morning came too quickly. I considered calling in sick, but knew that would only raise suspicions. Whatever game was being played, I needed to appear oblivious. I arrived at Westbrook to find everything functioning normally. Lights on, computers running, employees chatting by the coffee machine as though nothing unusual had happened. No one mentioned a power outage. "Charlotte," called Victor from his office doorway, his expression unreadable. "The CEO wants to see you in his office, immediately." The walk to the executive floor felt like marching toward an execution. Had he found the camera? Was I about to be fired like the others? Or was this the legitimate meeting that had been scheduled before last night's strange events? The CEO's assistant wasn't at her desk. His door stood open, revealing him standing at the window, back turned to the entrance, silhouetted against the morning sunlight. He didn't turn as I approached. "Come in, Charlotte," he said, his voice deceptively casual. "Close the door behind you." As the door clicked shut, he finally turned to face me, something held in his hand that made my blood run cold. "I believe," he said, holding up my hidden camera, "we have something important to discuss." My mind raced for excuses, explanations, anything to justify the camera in his hand, but the cold smile spreading across his face told me he wouldn't believe a word. "Security cameras, Charlotte?" The CEO placed the device deliberately on his desk. "I'm disappointed. 15 years with Westbrook, and this is how you repay our trust?" "I don't know what that is," I attempted, knowing how hollow it sounded. He sighed theatrically. "Please, we have you on the building security footage installing it." He turned his monitor toward me, showing a crystal-clear image of me placing the camera on his bookshelf. "Not to mention the browser history on your work computer showing your research into surveillance equipment." The power outage suddenly made perfect sense. They'd needed time to check my computer while ensuring I couldn't access the footage. "I want to know why," I said, abandoning pretense. "Why are you dismantling everything this company stands for? Why replace experienced employees with unqualified people? Why shift client portfolios into high-risk investments?" Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, at how much I'd noticed. "Your concerns, while misguided, are irrelevant now." He slid a document across his desk. "This is your termination agreement. Sign it, and you'll receive 6 months severance. Refuse, and we'll pursue legal action for corporate espionage." "Espionage?" I repeated incredulously. "I've dedicated my life to this company." "Which makes your betrayal all the more disappointing." His voice hardened. "You have until the end of the day to decide. Security will escort you to your desk to collect personal belongings, then off the premises. Your access has been revoked effective immediately." A security guard I didn't recognize appeared at the door, another new hire, no doubt. As I stood to leave, the CEO added, "The confidentiality clause is particularly stringent, Charlotte. I wouldn't discuss Westbrook's internal matters with anyone, former colleagues, industry contacts, certainly not regulatory bodies, for your own sake." The threat was unmistakable. The guard followed uncomfortably close as I emptied my desk into a cardboard box. Colleagues averted their eyes as I passed, whether from embarrassment or fear, I couldn't tell. Outside, standing on the sidewalk with my pathetic box of desk plants and framed certificates, humiliation burned through me. 15 years ended with baseless accusations and threats. I hadn't just lost my job, I'd been robbed of my professional dignity. But beneath the humiliation, determination hardened. Whatever was happening at Westbrook extended beyond routine corporate restructuring. The CEO's disproportionate response to my investigation confirmed it. Instead of heading home, I walked to the coffee shop across the street, ordering a latte and claiming a window seat with a clear view of Westbrook's entrance. I opened my laptop, my personal one, thankfully, and pretended to work while watching the building. 3 hours passed before I spotted him, the CEO exiting through the revolving doors, checking his watch impatiently. He wasn't carrying a briefcase or laptop, unusual for midday. A black town car pulled up, and he slipped inside. Acting on impulse, I flagged down a taxi. "Follow that black sedan," I said, feeling ridiculous using the cliched line from countless spy movies. The driver raised an eyebrow, but complied without comment. We tracked the town car out of the financial district, into an area dominated by tech companies and startups. It finally stopped outside a sleek glass building bearing the logo for Archer Financial Technologies, Westbrook's most aggressive competitor. I paid the driver and watched from across the street as the CEO entered the building with the familiarity of someone who'd been there many times before. 40 minutes later, my patience was rewarded when he emerged, accompanied by a woman I recognized with a shock. Nancy. My former colleague and friend, supposedly terminated during the restructuring, was now apparently working for our competitor. But her body language wasn't that of a new employee. She moved with authority, directing the CEO toward a waiting group of people entering the building. With a jolt, I recognized more faces among that group, former Westbrook employees who had been let go over the past months. They greeted the CEO not with the awkwardness of the recently fired, but with the comfortable camaraderie of longtime associates. I snapped photos with my phone, staying partially hidden behind a newspaper stand. What I was witnessing defied innocent explanation. Why would our CEO be meeting with recently fired Westbrook employees at our main competitor's headquarters? My phone vibrated with an incoming email, the IT department at Westbrook instructing me to return my laptop and phone immediately or face additional penalties. They'd obviously discovered I hadn't surrendered all my company property. I ignored it, continuing my surveillance. Around 3 p.m., the CEO left Archer alone, returning to his town car. I considered following him again, but decided the competitor's building might yield more information. The lobby directory showed Archer Financial occupied floors 10, 14. Without credentials, I couldn't get past security, but the building's cafe on the ground floor might offer insights. Purchasing a coffee, I settled at a table frequented by employees coming down for late afternoon breaks. "Another migration meeting?" I overheard a young man ask his colleague as they waited for their orders. "Third this week," his companion replied. "Westbrook's core systems are more complex than they anticipated. The conversion timeline's ambitious. Especially with the regulatory filing deadline. If they miss it." They moved away before I could hear more, but their casual conversation confirmed my growing suspicion. This wasn't simple corporate poaching or competition. This was systematic infiltration and sabotage. I remembered the newspaper article about Ridgeway Investments. The same executives under SEC investigation had moved to Westbrook, where they were now firing experienced staff, making questionable financial moves, and apparently coordinating with our main competitor. The pieces snapped together. They were deliberately weakening Westbrook from within, driving down its value while transferring client relationships, proprietary systems, and key personnel to Archer. By the time the board realized what was happening, Westbrook would be hollowed out, ripe for a hostile takeover at a fraction of its worth. But I still lacked definitive proof, the kind that would convince the board or regulators to intervene. The camera had been discovered, my access revoked, my credibility undermined. I needed another way to document what was happening. As I left the cafe, a familiar face caught my attention. Victor, hurrying through the lobby looking anxious. My department head hadn't been fired. He had no legitimate reason to be at our competitor's headquarters. "Victor?" I called out before I could stop myself. He froze, face draining of color as he recognized me. Charlotte, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same question. His eyes darted around nervously. Not here, he whispered. They might be watching. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour, the boathouse. Come alone. Before I could respond, he hurried away, disappearing into the crowd dot. The boathouse at Riverside Park was nearly deserted as evening approached. I found Victor sitting on a bench overlooking the water, constantly checking his surroundings. He visibly relaxed when he saw me alone. I was afraid you wouldn't come, he said as I sat beside him. Or worse, that you'd be followed. What's going on, Victor? Why were you at Archer's headquarters? He ran a hand through his thinning hair. They're recruiting me, like the others. He looked ashamed. I haven't accepted yet, but they're persistent and persuasive. Who's they? The CEO? Richardson is just the public face. This goes deeper. Victor lowered his voice. Charlotte, they're executing a coordinated attack on Westbrook. The Ridgeway executives, the selective firings, the portfolio restructuring. It's all designed to cripple the company while making it look like normal business decisions. For a hostile takeover, I finished. He nodded. Archer wants our client list and proprietary trading algorithms, but they know the board would never approve a merger. So instead, they're destroying us from within, driving down our value until the board has no choice but to sell. But why fire our best people? Because we, would have noticed the pattern and raised alarms. Anyone with institutional knowledge is a threat. His hands trembled slightly. I'm only still there because my signature is required on certain regulatory documents. The regulatory filing deadline the Archer employees mentioned, I said. The quarterly SEC disclosure. If they miss it, it triggers an automatic review. Victor leaned closer. Listen, Charlotte, I can help you. I can get you documents proving what they're doing, but I need assurances I won't be implicated. I studied him carefully. Why the sudden change of heart? His face fell. They threatened my daughter's scholarship if I didn't cooperate. She's at Princeton. Her future depends on it. But last night... He swallowed hard. They asked me to falsify compliance documents. That's not just unethical, it's criminal. I never signed up for that. I made a decision. I need concrete evidence, Victor. Trading records, board presentations, anything showing the deliberate undermining of Westbrook or connections to Archer. I can get those. But what will you do with them? I'm going straight to Douglas Westbrook. Victor's eyes widened. The founder? He's been retired for years. He still owns controlling interest and chairs the board. This is his life's work they're destroying. I stood up. Get me those documents by tomorrow. I'll handle the rest. The next day, I woke to an email from Victor containing a secure link, dozens of internal documents showing the systematic dismantling of Westbrook Financial. Client accounts being unnecessarily restructured, risk profiles being ignored, experienced employees flagged for termination without cause. Most damning was an email chain between Richardson and Archer's CEO discussing asset migration timelines and regulatory circumvention strategies. They weren't even being subtle in their private communications. I spent the morning compiling everything: Victor's documents, my notes on the firings, photos of the CEO entering Archer's building, and transcripts of conversations I'd overheard. Then, I drafted a formal letter to Douglas Westbrook, detailing the conspiracy with supporting evidence. Finding his contact information wasn't easy. The retired founder valued his privacy, but 15 years in financial services builds connections. By noon, I had his private email from a former executive who still played golf with him weekly. Before sending everything, I made multiple backup copies and sent encrypted versions to my personal lawyer with instructions to release them to regulatory authorities if anything happened to me. Richardson's threats still echoed in my mind. Then I pressed send. 3 hours later, my phone rang. An unlisted number. Miss Wilson? Douglas Westbrook here. The gravelly voice was unmistakable from years of company meetings. I've reviewed your materials. Are you available to meet immediately? By 6 p.m., I was sitting in the private conference room of Westbrook Tower. the same building I'd been escorted from in disgrace just days earlier. Around the massive oak table sat the entire board of directors, looking grim. Douglas Westbrook, 78 but still imposing, sat at the head. "Thank you for coming, Miss Wilson. Your allegations are extremely serious." "They're not allegations, sir. They're documented facts." The door opened, and Richardson walked in, flanked by two men I recognized as Archer executives. His confident smile faltered when he saw me. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. "This woman installed unauthorized surveillance equipment and was terminated for cause." "Sit down, Alexander," Douglas said coldly. "Miss Wilson has provided substantial evidence suggesting you've been deliberately sabotaging this company from within as part of a coordinated effort with Archer Financial." Richardson scoffed. "Preposterous. We've simply been modernizing an outdated institution." "By firing our most experienced employees?" Douglas interrupted. "By manipulating client portfolios against their established risk tolerances? By holding secret meetings with our direct competitors?" One of the board members, a stern-faced woman I recognized as the former SEC commissioner, slid a document toward Richardson. "We've already contacted the regulatory authorities. This special meeting was called not to hear your denials, but to formally remove you as CEO, effective immediately." "You can't do this," Richardson sputtered, looking to the Archer executives for support. They remained silent, already distancing themselves. "We have contracts, agreements, which are void if obtained through fraudulent means," the former commissioner stated flatly. "The evidence Miss Wilson provided includes your explicit discussions of regulatory circumvention and deliberate devaluation of Westbrook assets." Watching Richardson's composure crumble was oddly unsatisfying. Beyond him, I could only see the damage done to the company I loved, the colleagues who had lost their jobs, the clients whose trust had been violated. Douglas Westbrook turned to me. "Miss Wilson, your loyalty to this institution is extraordinary. You risked your reputation and potentially your career to protect what we've built." He looked around the table. "The board is prepared to offer you immediate reinstatement, of course, with appropriate compensation for the distress caused." "Thank you, sir," I replied, "but I believe Westbrook needs more than my reinstatement. It needs systematic change to prevent this from happening again." He nodded thoughtfully. "What do you propose?" "A complete audit of all personnel decisions made under Richardson's tenure, with priority reinstatement offered to terminated employees. A thorough review of all client portfolios to ensure they align with established risk profiles. And," I took a deep breath, "a new executive position focused on internal compliance and ethical governance, reporting directly to the board." Douglas exchanged glances with the other board members. "These all seem like prudent measures. Would you be interested in heading this new division, Miss Wilson?" The offer caught me by surprise. I would need to consider—" "Of course," he interrupted with a small smile. "But in the meantime, we need an interim CEO while we search for a permanent replacement. Someone who understands our culture and values, who has demonstrated unwavering commitment to our company's integrity." He looked at me pointedly. "Would you consider serving in that capacity?" The room fell silent, all eyes on me. From senior analyst to CEO in the span of a week, it was unimaginable. Yet who better understood the wounds that needed healing? "I would be honored," I said finally, "on one condition." "Name it," Douglas replied. "That Victor Harmon be reinstated as department head with the assurance that his daughter's scholarship remains secure." Douglas nodded. "Consider it done." As the meeting adjourned, Richardson was escorted from the building, experiencing the same humiliation he had inflicted on so many others. The remaining board members approached to congratulate me, but my mind was already racing with the challenges ahead: rebuilding trust, recalling our talented people, repairing client relationships. The company that had been my professional home for 15 years now rested in my hands. The responsibility was enormous, but as I looked out from the conference room to the city beyond, I felt ready. Westbrook would not only survive this attempt to destroy it, it would emerge stronger, more ethical, and more resilient than before, and I would make sure of it.